In doing some research, I found out that the capital in Hunger Games is actually in the Rocky Mountains, closer to where Colorado used to be. Suddenly, this whole movie makes a lot more sense. I mean, it would be legal, right? Even in the post-apocalypse? I mean, that's why they have all the munchies, right? That's why they find reality television fascinating, and why they elected Snow. No, I'm serious. He may seem like a dictator, but he probably got elected. I mean, you think he's just growing roses in that greenhouse? What? I was thinking about some other things too, and poor Liam Hemsworth. I mean, second fiddle to his older brother and second fiddle to Peeta in this movie. Who'd have thunk it? Now that the Hunger Games franchise is coming to a close, I can talk about how the story unfolded and evolved over the series of 4 films, and perhaps even touch upon some things that I didn't get a chance to talk about in the previous 3 reviews. One thing I never talked about, probably because I'm not a prepubescent girl, was the torrid love triangle. I didn't talk about it because, in all honesty, the Hunger Games for me is about just that. The bloodlust took over every time I watched one of these movies, and I just wanted to get to the games. Looking back, I now realize that the love story was supposed to be an integral part of this franchise. And while I'll skip over the fact that once again we have a young female lead who must define herself by choosing a man, I will say that I don't think I'm alone in thinking that Katniss and Peeta shouldn't have ended up together. Part of that's probably because I never really bought the chemistry between Lawrence and Hutcherson. Part of that might be because I'm still dealing with the fact that the guy who's a baker is named after a type of bread. I see you've met my eldest son, Peeta. Well, let me introduce the twins. This is Nan and Ciabatta. What I'm learning now is that the Hunger Games perhaps does things just slightly different from what you'd expect. It's not actually about the Hunger Games. Katniss doesn't actually end up with who you think she should end up with. And in fact, Katniss herself is not actually a leader. That's right. I think true leadership is a strong, bearded Canadian. But it took me 4 films to realize that Katniss never really wants to be a leader. In fact, she just wants to do what she feels is right, no matter the cost. And that actually includes who she has to kill. And the irony being that that actually mirrors the behavior of the very leader she opposes. But this was just one of the many levels that my tiny little bloodthirsty mind began to see once I realized that this franchise is not just about children killing children. I'd like to take this time to remind you, real schoolers, that I am in fact a teacher, and may have unresolved issues when it comes to my job. What I discovered, other than that dark little secret about my chosen profession, is that these are in fact not about reality television or gladiator-type battles. They are in fact Civil War movies, and better than that, they're well-told Civil War movies. Screenwriters Peter Craig and Buffy alum Danny Strong created a very intelligent script which actually shows the reality of a civil war, that there are innocent victims on both sides of the conflict, that soldiers like Katniss and Pocket Bread can suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, and the fact is, nobody wins. But we all know the subtext does not end there. And as much as it is a sick joke about children killing children, I would pay good money to see reality television stars go at it in a battle to the death. Wouldn't you want to see any of the Jersey Shore kids go up against any of the Kardashians? I mean, that's basically just speeding up Darwinism. And while the franchise started as merely a parable about how far we would go with reality television to be entertained, that little nugget of subtext grew into the fact that now these films represent what happens with propaganda and the news in wartime. You'd think I'd be talking about World War II propaganda back in the 40s, but the fact is, it still has parallels today. As I touched on earlier, Katniss is not truly a leader. She's a figurehead, a face to the rebellion. And the fact is, she and her team of Cressida and her camera crew mirror what CNN and Fox do on broadcast news with any type of war conflict. I really admire all the work that Collins put into her novel and all the layers that the screenwriters created with the script. That's why I'm actually giving the subtext of Mockingjay Part 2 the For the Win. Did I just give imaginary praise to a literary device? I've become the Charlie Kaufman of English teachers. Don't worry, real students, that does not mean that this is a thinking man's film. It still has some great action and creative over-the-top death traps that would make Jigsaw proud. You knew that the death traps had to be bigger and better in the final film of the franchise, and it did not disappoint. The games were basically expanded to the entire capital, where hundreds of pods gave you death traps like machine gun turrets, flamethrowers, disintegration beams, and genetically engineered mutts. But it raised some questions. If Snow went through all this trouble, spending arguably millions of dollars to create these genetically engineered faceless killing machines, why not use all these resources to merely end the Civil War? Why concentrate everything on a teenaged girl. And of course the people responsible for all this carnage are the game makers, the ones who set these death traps and create the ultimate entertainment-based homicides. But it begs the question, how do you get a job like that? I want to thank you for coming in for this job interview, but right off the bat, we're just going to loosen things up and do some word association. So just say whatever pops into your mind. You ready? Children, murder. Kittens, murder. Ice cream, chocolate. Oh, no, I should have said murder. I'm sorry, the position has been filled. You know what else was filled? My expectations. This isn't a perfect film, but arguably none of the films in the franchise are even close to perfect. They're solid. This film especially suffers from some real pacing issues and Peter Jackson syndrome. They could have shaved about half an hour off of the movie and probably about 4 endings, but it is still a solid conclusion to a solid franchise, and it is an earn it. Poll question, what was your favorite Hunger Games film out of the franchise? As always, leave your answers in the comments section below. Be sure to subscribe to Real School, follow me on Twitter, and of course, if you get anything out of Real School, you can always give a little back. Just click the link, and you can become a Real School patron. But until next time, school's out.